Mine is a lady, stranger to blue water, coming home to a place he'd never been before. The radio reminds me of my home far away.
In October 1997, thousands of fans gathered at Coors Field in Denver, Colorado, not for baseball, but to remember a man who had become the voice of the American heartland. As "Take Me Home, Country Roads" echoed through the stadium, the crowd swayed, singing every word. This wasn't just a memorial, it was a testament to how deeply one artist had touched millions of lives. John Denver was far more than just the singer of beloved country folk classics. He was a complex figure who defied easy categorization, an environmentalist before it was fashionable, a humanitarian who performed in communist China, and a poet who captured the American spirit in ways few others have managed. In the 1970s, you couldn't turn on a radio without hearing his distinctive voice. With his wire-rimmed glasses, mop-top haircut, and earnest smile, he didn't look like a typical star. Yet he sold out stadiums, won countless awards, and recorded approximately 300 songs, 200 of which he wrote himself. His albums sold more than 40 million copies worldwide. People don't realize just how revolutionary John Denver was. As music historian James Burton noted, here was a guy singing about nature, environmental conservation, and personal growth during the height of the Vietnam War and Watergate. While others were protesting, he was proposing solutions through connection with nature and each other. Behind that sunny exterior and positive messages, though, lay a more complicated story. Denver struggled with depression, faced career setbacks, and battled personal demons that would eventually contribute to both his greatest successes and his deepest struggles. His life was a testament to the power of reinvention and the price of fame. This is the story of how a boy who dreamed of flying became a man who soared not just in airplanes, but in the hearts and minds of people around the world. This is the story of John Denver, a man whose music continues to resonate with new generations, whose environmental message seems more relevant than ever, and whose complex legacy challenges us to look beyond the simple image of the sunny, mountain-loving troubadour to understand the real person beneath. Speaking of John Denver's timeless songs, which of his classics became your family's unofficial anthem? Was it "Take Me Home, Country Roads," "Rocky Mountain High," or maybe something less known like "Calypso"? Share your story below. Early life. Henry John Deutschendorf Jr. was born on December 31st, 1943, in Roswell, New Mexico, to a family where aviation and discipline were daily facts of life. His father, Henry Dutch Deutschendorf Sr., was a U.S. Air Force pilot whose career meant constant movement for the family. Young John spent his childhood as a typical military brat, relocating from base to base, never settling in one place long enough to form lasting friendships. This nomadic lifestyle, while challenging, gave him two gifts that would shape his future: a love of flying, inherited from his father, and an appreciation for the diverse landscapes of America that would later infuse his songwriting. But life in a military family wasn't easy. His father was strict, demanding, and often distant, creating a complex relationship that would influence many of Denver's later songs about home and belonging. The young boy found solace in music. At age 11, he received his first guitar, a Gibson acoustic, a gift from his grandmother that would change his life forever. While other kids were playing sports or chasing typical teenage pursuits, John spent countless hours practicing, teaching himself to play by listening to folk records. His early musical influences were diverse. Pete Seeger, the Kingston Trio, and Glenn Campbell all left their mark on his developing style. During his high school years in Fort Worth, Texas, he joined a boys' choir and began performing at local clubs. Despite his father's hopes that he would follow the military path, John was already dreaming of a musical career. He attended Texas Tech University in 1961, studying architecture, but spent more time performing in local venues than attending classes. The folk music scene of the early 1960s provided the perfect environment for his emerging talent. While in college, he formed his first group, a folk trio called the Alpine Trio. This was followed by a brief stint with the Mitchell Trio, later known as Denver, Boise and Johnson, where he replaced Chad Mitchell. These early experiences gave him not just performance skills, but also valuable insights into the music industry. During this formative period, the seeds of his later success were being planted. His clean-cut image, optimistic outlook, and genuine love for traditional American music set him apart from the more politically charged folk scene of the time. He was developing a unique voice that blended traditional folk with a more accessible, mainstream appeal. A combination that would eventually help him bridge the gap between folk, country, and pop music. The transformation from Henry John Deutschendorf Jr. to John Denver wasn't just a name change for marketability. It represented his evolution from a shy military kid to an artist finding his own voice. These early years, marked by constant movement and search for identity, would later emerge in his music as themes of home, belonging, and the natural world, themes that would resonate with millions of listeners worldwide. Rise to stardom. The late 1960s marked the beginning of John Denver's transformation from a folk scene regular to a national star. His time with the Mitchell Trio had given him valuable experience, but it was his decision to go solo in 1969 that would prove pivotal. RCA Records, recognizing his potential, signed him to their label, and the stage was set for one of music's most meteoric rises. It was during this period that one of music's most fortuitous collaborations occurred. In 1970, Denver wrote "Leaving on a Jet Plane," which became Peter, Paul and Mary's only #1 hit. This success established him as a serious songwriter and opened doors that had previously been closed. The industry began to take notice of the earnest young man with the crystal-clear voice and gift for melody. But it was 1971 that would change everything. While working with Bill Danoff and Taffy Nivert, Denver helped complete a song they had been working on about West Virginia. Despite never having been to the state, Denver connected deeply with the imagery and emotions of what would become "Take Me Home, Country Roads." The song reached #2 on the Billboard charts and became an instant classic, marking Denver's true arrival as a solo artist. Success bred success. Through the early 1970s, Denver released a string of hits that would define his career. Rocky Mountain High, 1972, Sunshine on My Shoulders, 1973, Annie's Song, 1973, and Thank God I'm a Country Boy, 1974. Each song showcased his ability to connect with listeners through simple, heartfelt lyrics and memorable melodies. His music spoke to a yearning for simplicity and connection to nature that resonated deeply with an American public increasingly disconnected from its rural roots. Television appearances helped cement his status as a mainstream star. His clean-cut image and genuine enthusiasm made him a natural for television, and he became a regular guest host on The Tonight Show. His TV specials drew massive audiences, and his concerts sold out venues worldwide. By 1974, he was one of the biggest-selling artists in the world, with multiple platinum albums and a growing international following. Many say Denver was ahead of his time with environmental activism. Which current global environmental issue do you think he would be most passionate about addressing if he were still with us today? What set Denver apart during this period wasn't just his musical success, but his ability to bridge different audiences. He appealed to country music fans without being strictly country, to folk purists while achieving pop success, and to mainstream audiences while maintaining artistic integrity. His image, the granny glasses, mop-top hair and embroidered shirts, became iconic, representing a wholesome alternative to both the glam rock and outlaw country movements of the era. Yet even as he reached the pinnacle of success, Denver was laying the groundwork for another aspect of his career. He began using his platform to advocate for environmental causes and humanitarian issues, foreshadowing the activism that would become increasingly important in his later years. His 1972 song, Rocky Mountain High, became more than just a hit. It was adopted as Colorado's second official state song and became an unofficial anthem for environmental consciousness. Peak years. The mid to late 1970s marked John Denver's zenith, establishing him as one of the world's most successful performers. His achievements during this period were remarkable. Country Music Association's Entertainer of the Year, multiple Grammy nominations, and sold-out concerts worldwide. His television specials, particularly his memorable collaborations with the Muppets, drew millions of viewers. Denver's influence extended far beyond music. He became a prominent humanitarian working with UNICEF and the Hunger Project. His environmental activism led to the founding of the WinStar Foundation in 1976, and he was one of the first Western artists to tour the USSR, using music to bridge Cold War divisions. His interest in space exploration even led to him being shortlisted for a NASA civilian spaceflight. This period also saw Denver branch into acting, starring alongside George Burns in Oh God, 1977. His music evolved while maintaining its core themes. Songs like Looking for Space and Calypso showcased his ability to blend personal growth themes with environmental consciousness. Albums like Wind Song topped the charts, and he commanded some of the industry's highest concert fees. However, this peak period also brought significant challenges. The pressures of fame and constant touring began straining his marriage to Annie Martell. His increasing political activism sometimes put him at odds with the music industry and his core audience. Some critics began questioning the authenticity of his wholesome image. Despite these challenges, Denver's artistic output remained strong through the late 1970s. He continued experimenting with his sound while staying true to his signature style. As the decade drew to a close, he had achieved a unique position in American culture, part entertainer, part activist, and part global ambassador, though personal struggles would soon test his resilience. What's your personal connection to John Denver's music? When and where did you first hear his songs, and what memories do they bring back? Personal life and challenges. The 1980s brought significant personal turmoil to John Denver's life, marking a stark contrast to his public image of the cheerful, nature-loving performer. His marriage to Annie Martell, which had inspired one of his most beautiful love songs, Annie's Song, ended in 1982 after a bitter divorce. The split was particularly difficult, culminating in Denver famously cutting their marital bed in half with a chainsaw in a moment of anger, an incident that shocked fans who knew him for his gentle persona. Substance abuse began to affect his life during this period. While Denver maintained his public schedule, he struggled privately with alcohol addiction. This led to several drunk driving arrests in the 1980s and early 1990s, tarnishing his wholesome image. The most publicized incident occurred in 1993 when he crashed his Porsche near his Aspen home. Professional challenges compounded his personal struggles. The changing musical landscape of the 1980s, with its emphasis on new wave and pop, left Denver's folk country style seemingly outdated. Record sales declined, and his new releases failed to achieve the chart success of his earlier work. RCA Records, his longtime label, dropped him in 1986, marking the end of an era. His second marriage to Cassandra Delaney in 1988 brought temporary happiness, but ended in divorce in 1993. This period was marked by custody battles over their daughter, Jessie Bell, adding to his emotional burden. Financial issues also emerged, with the IRS investigating him for tax evasion in the early 1990s. Despite these challenges, Denver continued performing and maintained his commitment to environmental and humanitarian causes. However, Friends noted that the personal struggles took their toll, affecting both his creativity and his spirit. The contrast between his public persona and private pain became increasingly difficult to reconcile, leading to periods of depression. These years revealed the complexity of a man who had touched millions with songs of joy and natural beauty, while wrestling with his own inner demons. Yet even in these difficult times, Denver's resilience showed through as he continued to seek peace through his music, his activism, and his beloved Rocky Mountains. Did you know John Denver was one of the first Western artists to perform in China? His music truly crossed borders. If you're watching from outside the US, tell us which of his songs is most popular in your country. Later, career and legacy. By the early 1990s, John Denver had shifted his focus from commercial success to environmental activism and humanitarian work. Though no longer topping charts, he maintained a loyal following, performing around 100 shows annually and finding new audiences in Asia, particularly China. His passion for flying intensified during these years. As an accomplished pilot with over 2,700 hours of experience, he often flew himself to performances. This passion would ultimately lead to his untimely death on October 12, 1997, when his experimental Rutan Long EZ aircraft crashed into Monterey Bay, California. At the time of his death, Denver was experiencing a quiet renaissance. He was working on an autobiography, planning environmental projects, and finding new audiences through a younger generation of artists. His sudden passing led to an unprecedented outpouring of grief, with thousands attending memorial services and tributes flowing in from around the world.